You know, in 2019, global sales in the gourmet cheese industry hit the $118 billion mark. I said billion with a B. Now that's a lot of cheddar, right? So cutting out her slice in that market is an incredible woman that we are going to get a lot closer to today. As a matter of fact, her story is going to be Gouda. You knew I was going to do that, don't pretend. We are going to meet Andrea Power of Hatchman's Premium Cheeses. How are you, Andrea?
I am great. How are you?
Fantastic, and welcome to the Pivot series.
Thank you very much.
Cheese, though.
Yeah?
It's a big deal.
It is.
It's a very big deal, and you have gone straight to the premium cheeses market, and that's a story we want to get to. But first, we want to know more about who Andrea is. How did the Andrea story start?
So the Andrea story started at Lower State Plantation, where I grew up. So I was born in Canada, and I came to Barbados when I was 5 years old. And I initially lived at Lower State Plantation, where my father's family had a dairy, full dairy, cows. We also had sheep, goats, pigs, chickens, you name it. It was a full working farm.
You are a farm girl.
I am a farm girl, and I
Oh.
thoroughly enjoyed being there. I thoroughly enjoyed summers. Summers were not filled with summer camps or any of those things. It was filled with animals, looking after animals. My dad in particular ran Lower State Dairy Farm, the milking side of it, for quite a bit. And he was very good at what he did. And he had a lot of intuition about dairy products. So I do remember him making butter. I remember him making cottage cheese, albeit it tasted positively vile. But
You remember that.
I do remember. So all through school, farming was the mainstay still. So it's how we paid school fees, etc. It was always the side thing. My mother's view was that, yes, you have your education, you know, the standard direction that we're often steered in terms of, you know, A-levels, first degree, second degree, etc. But she also felt that you needed to have something to fall back on. So kind of maybe in the 60s and 70s, we would say to our children, learn a trade.
Right.
Well, for me, learn a trade was, you know, stick close to being able to make your food and being able to grow your food. And that was where my love for dairy and dairy products really was inculcated. And later on, both parents, because of how well-traveled they are, how well-traveled we are, we really like to try things. If you are going to kill me, food poisoning is probably the way to go, because I'm going to
You're gonna try it anyway.
Everything. So when it came to cheese, it did not matter how stinky it smelled. It did not matter how off-putting it looked. I want to try it. And so try it I did. I ended up just developing a love for cheese. And fast forward to 1 year having an argument with another cousin on Facebook about the plight of dairy farmers in Barbados. And me saying to him, well, you know, it served you all right because we could be doing other things with the milk. And he said, like, what? And I said, well, like, make cheese. He said, well, we can't make cheese. I said, well, you stick a pin, watch this space. And I just went off to prove a point. I had
you're one of those arguers.
Yes.
I'm not just going to win the fight. I want to show you how
I don't just want to be right. I want to demonstrate how right I am. So I really did not expect this to be a commercial venture. When I discovered that, you know, the first set I made, I gave it to my mother. She's still with us, which meant that, you know,
I met her, it's true.
This is not a harebrained scheme after all. So I just like the idea of making it for me. Okay. That, you know, while the rest of folks need to go to the supermarket to get their cheese, I could make mine. I just thought, you know, again, I'm that kind of overachiever. I want to make my own cheese when everybody else is just getting it from the supermarket. But I let a chef friend of mine taste the goat's cheese that I had made. Now, I'd never tasted goat's cheese before in my entire life.
So we're going to need to pause there.
Sure.
Because usually when a person decides to make something, it is because they have tried it. It probably awakened something in them and they thought, hey, I could do this too. You, on the other hand, made the thing without actually knowing how it was supposed to taste?
Yes, I did. I started to look at all kinds of YouTube videos. I remembered what my dad taught me. The one thing Dad had taught me that is true to this day is that all cheese starts off the same way. It starts with the same ingredient, namely milk, whether it's from cow, sheep, or goat. And there's a particular process that all cheeses go through.
Fermenting.
What do you call it now? There's a sophisticated term. The culturing of the milk. The acidification. Acidification.
Most of us just leave the milk out.
Yes, sorry. So he explained that all cheese goes through this process. It's just a question of whether it's a long process. Like if you have 3 stages, which stage is longer than the next? You play around with temperatures, this sort of thing. So I said, okay, I know that what he put out did taste like it was some cure for some far-flung disease, but nothing that you'd want to eat. But I understood that, his heart was in the right place.
Right.
And I also understood that the drastic difference was he's doing this in sort of 30-degree heat, whereas where it's being made originally, it's 15, 16 degrees. And, now that I've done a little bit of biology and chemistry, I now come to understand what heat can do. And, so I kind of applied just slightly more modern nuances in terms of understanding the environments and what we needed to equalize, more or less. So it's that kind of curiosity and wondering, okay, what if I do X? What would happen to Y? So on the goat's cheese, in as much as I'd never tasted it before, I'd gone online, I'd looked at different cheeses, I'd seen it in the supermarket, so I kind of had an idea of what it should at least look like.
Okay.
So I really was just kind of going at this just from the mad scientist perspective of wanting to keep doing this and trying different things. When I let my chef friend taste it, bless his cotton socks, because I myself wasn't tasting it. He then tasted it, and the next day he called to place an order.
Really?
I said, boss, how you mean you want order? Well, we use a lot of goat cheese in the restaurant. What's the price per kilo? I said, look, I just made this thing so that you could taste it and tell me.
Few edges, just
that it's actually what it's supposed to taste like, and that you didn't die. So that, I think, was kind of that eureka moment of, oh, I can do this. This is possible. Obviously, there's a whole set of officialdom that I needed to put in place after that. But I will never forget the epiphany that I had, and him calling to place the order. I almost did a cartwheel. It wasn't. There wasn't a full.
It was the thought that counts.
It wasn't even a quarter turn.
It was the thought that counts.
I just remember calling my mother and saying, "Mom, somebody thinks my cheese is the," and she was like, "Really?" And as per usual, her usual style. Okay, what do we need to do next? She's just ready to go.
Because we are going to get into Mama, because she's an interesting part of this story.
Mom is hilarious. Mom is fabulous.
Esquimo. Value, convenience, we got it. 50 stores and services, yeah, we got it all. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this mall has it all. Esquimo. Right here in Haggett Hall. Esquimo. Convenience for the family. Esquimo. Everything for you and me. Esquimo. Right here, yeah. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this
Andrea, let us pause to take a moment to talk about the powerhouse, literally and figuratively, that is your mother. Mm-hmm. I met your mother. This woman is unreal, and I love her. But growing up with her must have been something completely surreal. And you spoke fondly about the number of hours that you would have spent in the kitchen helping your mom prep food, get food ready, because she used to run a school canteen.
Yes.
She was literally the single most important woman on campus. Huh?
Yes.
Did we just say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
To this day, I am well aware that while there are teachers who would have molded students and so on, the lady who is controlling the flow of the food and happily giving it away is really the person who stands out.
She's the one.
Because you kind of remember hunger and who fixed it.
Yes.
You know, Mrs. Whoever that helps you with math, bless her soul.
Bless her soul.
But
it was never going to happen with calculus. So.
The lady that fed you. So my mother, her name is Joan Grimes, and she started out actually selling out of a tray outside of Ellerslie Secondary School, probably in the mid 80s, mid to late 80s. Rotis and hot dogs were the standard fare. I actually remember, and yes, it was probably around 1987, around 1988, because I started QC in 1987. And when we were supposed to do speech day, you know, you get a holiday for speech day if you're not attending.
Right.
I would spend those holidays outside of Ellerslie with her, sitting next to her, yelling rotis and hot dogs. My job was to drum up the sales. So towards the latter part of that year, she was able to get the canteen concession. And from there, I mean, my mom is a great cook, but I really did not see her in this role. And mind you, at 12, 13, I don't think any of us are working out what role our parents are doing.
Yeah.
As long as we have food, life, and limb, we really don't care what they're doing. But my mom, the menu at the school was wholesome. It was sweetbreads, it was fish cakes. There was cooked lunch for the teachers every day. There was steamed pudding and sauce. You name it, it was on the menu, and it required prep.
Yeah, I was about to say though.
And because my mother, from way back then, a number of canteen proprietors would subcontract a lot of the food prep. You know, they'll buy sweetbreads from this buddy, buy this thing, and sell.
Of course, yeah.
My mother did everything from scratch. Everything. So I have not so fond memories of husking out coconuts. Can I tell you, I despise coconuts to this day. It's one thing to have to take the dull knife to get the actual flesh out of the shell. It's another to get that fibrous crap outside of the shell off. And I'm pretty sure that there's some expert way of doing it. But at 12 and 13, I had not yet worked that out. And I saw this as a chore that was nothing short of abuse. The only saving grace is that I thoroughly enjoyed eating coconut. So for everyone that was husked out, I knew there was at least a piece that, was going to go flying somewhere. I'd go behind that and my mouth would be going. So as long as I was kept occupied eating bits of coconut, I could be counted on to make it to the finish.
Fringe benefits.
Then we didn't have a food processor. So in the early stages, it is the grater with the 2 pieces of wood at the side, and you're over a big tub and you are going. Now, I don't know how much of my fingers may have gone into that bread.
Blessings from above.
But, I'm sure everyone can identify with the fact that there were casualties in that process. And so there was the sweetbread. And I'm talking about 30 or 40 sweetbreads being sold every day.
Wow.
So that should give you an idea of just how much sweetbread baking there needed to be. Then there was fish. Fried fish, the fish cutters was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it was also a staple on her cooked lunch menu. So there was 3-4 trips to the market every week. Bridgetown Market. I'll never forget the vendor, and I will call her name. Her name is Yvette. Her son also went to Ellerslie. So mom would go to the market to see Yvette, an abrasive, irascible woman as only you can be when you're in the market, because this market is a difficult place to be. And she would go to Yvette to get her fish. So this started off then a long sort of relationship between these two women, two hustlers, basically.
Right.
And Yvette would always call her to say, right, I have your fish. And we are buying 200 and 300 when the fish are cheap and plentiful. We'll buy 200-300 at a time. It is then, so I can bone a flying fish to save my life.
Oh dear.
And if you want me to bone a flying fish, it means that you don't necessarily want the bone separated from the flesh.
Or you just don't want much flesh.
And that you're not looking for much.
Right, okay.
But mom was a fantastic boner. I was very good at scaling and cleaning.
Okay.
And I scaled and cleaned because I thoroughly love fish melts and raw. So I knew that if I cleaned the fish, I would be in charge of just how much rows and melts were salvaged.
Again.
Mom would clean and just fling. Clean, fling.
Fringe benefits.
And that person that is just, when she flings, just catching, bringing back, searching for the rows and the melts, and then flinging again. So many times, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, we are still at it.
And you're a school girl.
I have school, you know, we're going to leave home at 6 to head down because you need to beat traffic. She needs to get the breakfast crowd. I'm going to help sell in the canteen before I go to school. So this is a way of life for me.
That's a lot for a school child.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think there was ever a time when I thought, oh no, not this chore again. And it was also during a time when the water supply in St. Thomas was not the best. So you'd get water like between 4 and 7 in the mornings, and then evenings it goes again. It's also St. Thomas, it's Rock Hall. December, if you didn't really have to bathe, you weren't gonna do it.
Right.
The water was a special kind of cold. Like when it hit your skin, there was a sting with it. You know, I felt like I was gonna get freezer burn from the water.
From showering, it's like, this is actually a danger to my life.
So when I think about all of these kind of like hassles that you go through just to get through the door and go to school, looking back, it seemed like quite a lot. But when I was doing it, it wasn't that big a deal. And it was because my mother had the view that you not only do what you have to do, but, you know, don't complain because there's always somebody worse than you. We had, at the time my mother was renovating the house, my stepfather had died in the middle of house renovations.
Oh.
So when I started Queen's College, my house actually didn't have a roof. We were, you know, because when you're doing renovations and
in parts of the house.
You're just moving around until this part is finished and whatever. And I still have the scars from my knees of getting up in the middle of the night and going to the bathroom and falling into the foundation. So you kind of learn early o'clock, you know what? Pee before the lights go off because this is a hazard, right? But even that I thought was funny. I was happy to relay the story and I just thought it was a funny thing to happen. And so so I remember us, like, it's the proceeds from the canteen. These are not high prices. This is not highly profitable.
Because the school children
venture.
You know, these are 5-star
people
clients.
don't have a lot of money to spend. So, and on top of that, there's 2-3 months in the summer, a month at Easter and a month at Christmas, where there's no money coming in. So I'm not sure how we managed. I honestly do not know. I will say now that in retrospect, there were times when I've noticed that my mother wasn't eating, but I always had food. I didn't give a thought to the fact that she wasn't eating. So I only discovered here subsequently that, you know, she wasn't eating because there wasn't enough to feed 2 of us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I always ate.
Yes.
Sundays, so notwithstanding the hard work that we did, Sundays I still remember the 2 o'clock matinee on CBC. And we would hop into bed. The TV was the tiniest of black and white TVs. And we'd hop into bed and watch the matinee, whether it was Humphrey Bogart or whoever else of the day that, you know, from back in the day that she liked, we would watch those. She would also, my stepfather had died and left a Pioneer sound system, radio.
Good system.
So we had that and the Technics turntable.
You were set.
We were set. So
Technics?
she had any number of LPs and 45s from when she was in England. So we would load those up and have an entire oldie goldies vintage reggae session on Sunday afternoons, just the two of us. Or we'd sit in a quiet moment and either do the Sunday crossword together or play I Spy. I particularly loved I Spy.
Why did I know that? I
don't understand why my son doesn't like I Spy now. But it's kind of like when you hit that moment of quietude, you have no idea what else to do with yourself. You have a child who has more energy than anybody else to burn and who doesn't stop talking. So you have to come up with something to keep them occupied. She came up with I Spy.
How about I Spy, Andrea? How about that?
And I thoroughly loved it. So this is why I say, she had a way of making what probably was real hardship seem like a real distant thing compared to the fun.
And you never noticed.
And I never
noticed.
There were Sundays she would load us into my stepfather's old Carina, and she would drive. She would say, "Let's take the food for a drive."
Okay.
So she'll make all of the goodies. She was a boss and still is at cakes and stuff like that. They're loaded up. And away we went, driving around. This is not to say that my mother knows roads very well.
Doesn't matter.
Invariably,
taking the food for a ride.
Those outings were much longer than had planned because we got lost. Or there was times when, because something always went wrong with this vehicle every week. And I'd become an expert in my teens at changing flat tires and going to the tire man and looking to see if there is a not so smooth tire that he could swap out for this tire that is definitely done for. So every time something mechanical went wrong with the vehicle, Mum felt that the first approach was to see if it was something you could fix yourself.
Yeah.
Even though you have a mechanic and there's a reason why people go to the Polytechnic and so on. But my mother was of the view that sometimes these things might be just some simple thing. So, she wasn't sure if the reverse lights were working. She put the car in reverse and tells me to stand behind and let her know if the reverse lights have come on.
Yes.
She mistakes her foot off the brake and I have to run for cover.
She didn't promise it would be easy.
Now, in retrospect, I'm sure that was a childcare board offense. That was the funniest thing ever. My mother's ability to laugh, even in the face of absolute desperation, is, I think, what is like the all-time testament.
Eskimo, value, convenience, we got it. 50 stores and services, yeah, we got it all. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this mall has it all. Game on, right here in Haggett Hall. Game on, convenience for the family. Game on, everything for you and me. Game on, right here, yeah. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this mall has it all. Game on, game on.
So by the age of 13, 14, by then you had been a full-on farm girl. You have been an entrepreneur. And I'm pretty much thinking that when you're in school, you're not thinking to yourself, Andrea, you should take this canteen on the road. You probably had other plans.
Yes. So when we did guidance around 17, 18, sixth form, that's when teachers are having these sessions with you to shape, what it is you want to do and to kind of discuss different careers. And I really didn't know. And I didn't have an answer. So I'd come up with tourism and hospitality. Just the general hodgepodge, melange of things. Because like I said, people people tend to ask you, that's the question you get asked when you're 17 and 18
Yeah.
years, what are you going to do? And of course, if you draw a blank, you do get this look like, oh dear.
She's not going to make it.
This one is lost. We've lost one. Everybody else had doctor, vet, lawyer, and most of my colleagues from school have gone on to do precisely
what they
those
said.
things they said. So I didn't have a clue. And I did French, geography, and maths at A-level, which I think cemented the fact that I didn't have a clue.
Jacques Cousteau. I see Jacques Cousteau in your future.
When you say geography, French, and maths, especially in Barbados, nobody's forming a particular. You tell people maths, chemistry, and physics.
Right.
Yeah, got you. And there's a whole range of occupations that kind of come to mind. Geography, French, and maths, most people said to me, so you're going to teach? So,
3 subjects?
And I really had no, affection for teaching, or, I just didn't know. And then I think I remember saying to somebody, I'll do something that involves talking, because I like to talk. So I, went back to Canada after I finished school.
Okay.
While there, and I was supposed to I'd have been accepted to Ryerson University to study tourism and hospitality. So I actually did go through the act of applying. But the fact of the matter is that my mother could not afford to send me. Even getting, the fees as a Canadian national, it was still not.
It's still a lot.
It's still a lot of money. So I then said, I'll work. And up until that point, I'd never really worked outside of my mother's canteen. So I call it the year that I kind of loitered and did some working. I did one course at Centennial College in sociology, and I actually liked it. And I said, I could do sociology. I don't know what a sociologist does.
We'll figure it out.
But I like it.
Yeah.
So when I came back to Barbados after my year of loitering, because truth be told, I realized that life in Canada was a lot harder.
It's expensive. People don't get this.
And, I liked the fact that my mother was gonna cook for me on evenings, and that if there was a problem, there was still a close family arrangement. You're living at your parents, and this society still provides quite a lot of nurturing.
And we're very familiar.
And we're very familiar, and at an early age. So not necessarily now thinking, in your 30s or 40s, but still 18 to 29 in Barbados is still considered young, and that you should still be in the nest. And, in Canada, it's a much harsher environment. And
18 and out.
You are nameless and faceless, and you know what? However, whatever floats your boat, don't call us when you get in.
Yeah.
So I came back to Barbados and applied to university and started out doing a double major in sociology and political science. It seemed to be a very good melange of what I had done before. It also seemed to set me on a path where I'd be able to talk, whether it was for any particular reason or not. I thoroughly enjoyed political science and sociology. I enjoyed and still do enjoy understanding people and understanding how societies work. And because I felt still, even though I'd been in Barbados for all of this time, I felt that because of my upbringing and my different experiences, I still had this ability to be on the outside looking in and to celebrate the things about Barbados that need to be celebrated, but also to look at the things that we could learn from and do better with. And so that set me on that path really of development work. So my second degree then, my master's, was in international economics and trade. I felt that I needed to segue into something that was more applied. At that point, it was still going to be, okay, you're going to end up teaching. I didn't necessarily see myself teaching, but I saw myself not only doing the research, but showing how these subjects can improve, as they like to say in French, la condition humaine, to improve the human condition and improve humanity. And you know what? I didn't think that it was a major departure from my upbringing, because I saw my mother work to help people. Right. I saw my mother, we spent Christmases at children's homes we actually also brought children from children's homes at Christmas. Now, we only had half a ham, but Mom insisted that this half a ham was going to go to share among a number of mouths.
We can get a
and
cutter.
I will not lie and I will sit here and not tell you that, I was in a little PO'd that this ham was stretching a lot further than I had planned.
Yes.
Because obviously when Mom makes a ham,
Yeah.
you want as much of it. But I started to understand at a very early age. So yes, I'm an only child, but I've always shared and been encouraged to share. Mm-hmm. And my mother always said it didn't really matter how much you had. It is how much you had left. And it was the act of giving. And that however little you had, if you shared it, you would get more from somewhere else.
You will.
So with that, and because I was exposed to just what real disadvantage is in our society and the fact that it comes in different shapes and forms, I really did want to contribute to helping people be better. However flawed I was, I wanted to feel better about myself through helping people and to know that then there's some sort of legacy, some kind of tradition that's passed on about helping and contributing. So doing the international economics and trade, yes, just kind of elevated it to a more sophisticated and fancy level and, put me in a position where I could get some money to pay some bills.
Right.
Because ultimately, you want to help everybody, but you need to put a roof over your head. And again, my mother's example was clawing your way up bit by bit and doubling down to get ahead.
Right.
And so I did that master's. When I came back from doing the master's, I had a conversation with former Prime Minister Owen Arthur. And I remember taking him to task. He'd called for my husband at the time and I said, I'm just looking at you on the TV now. He was delivering a lecture. And he said, what do you think? I said, I think you talk a fair amount of crap. And I proceeded to give him my views on what could have been said in there. At the end of it, I thought, Andrea, this is one of those times when maybe you weren't supposed to do so much talking.
Maybe not this time around, yeah.
But he says to me, look, I have a job for you. I said, you have a job? And that's how I started working in Prime Minister's office as a research officer. I then wrote a speech for him. I will never forget the role of Labour in promoting the CARICOM single market and economy. It was a 30-page document that I had written based on research that I had done using the federal archives and coming back. So impressed with he was the speech. It was the first time that he'd ever read a speech done by a public servant and read it without making any changes.
Any edits? Wow, that's a big deal.
And then I was promoted to Chief Research Officer, and for 3 years I wrote all of his speeches. By this time, I had embraced the fact that there were two sides of me.
Right.
That there was this side that, yes, can do the research and talk about economics and economic theory and what we needed to do at a macro level. But there was also a side of me that understood that my shopkeeper needs to live and send her daughter to school. There was a side to me that understood whatever we did on that macro level, these are still individuals, these are people.
And this is where it matters.
And this is where it matters. And in fact, I will credit Owen Arthur for allowing me to use those two sides, because those were the two sides to him as well. A deep-seated understanding. So you do the macroeconomics, but it's driven by a deep-seated understanding and vision for what you feel needs to happen for your people to do better.
Right.
Whether your people are related to you through Prime Minister and constituent, or whether it is two neighbors. And so when I started to embrace, fast forward. So I've had all of these jobs in the development world, CARICOM Development Fund, now at the Caribbean Development Bank. When the whole cheese thing, appeared like manna from the sky, I had an option to just simply keep doing it on a little small scale just for myself, just to say, I can do cheese.
I do go cheese.
There you have it. But the reason I decided to commercialize it having no real experience in this field and still never considering myself an entrepreneur was because I was now working at Caribbean Development Bank, managing a number of programs where I have to advise agri-processors on how they can get into markets and so on. And it suddenly dawned on me, who the hell are you to be telling these people what to do when you've never done it yourself?
You're not walking your talk.
And there are so many of us in the development world. There are so many of us in government that are in, you know, whether it's a small business support program or whatever, that are run by people who have never done it. So we know it's hard, but we really don't know how hard it is. And I wanted to, I guess there was somebody who told me it's kind of like self-flagellation because I wanted to experience this. But I wanted to experience it. I wanted to try to make it work. I still don't know if what I've embarked on is going to work.
Right.
But I'm okay with that because then when I say, well, this is what I think we need to do to make it work, is because I've walked that journey and I'm not preaching to agro-processors. And I found that those conversations in the development world tended to be very patriarchal, very self-serving, very patronizing, without understanding that this is our man or a woman's bread, daily bread. Right. And that there are those who don't have my luxury of having a job and then this thing on the side. So that literally is what caused the pivot, if you will. It just happened that it was cheese, and I had some experience, albeit with bad tasting cheese from Dad. So I feel it was very important for me to walk that walk and experience fully what entrepreneurs across sectors go through, so that then when I'm leveraging my development work, when I'm developing those projects, that I can speak from a more personal experience as opposed to the top down, you should do this, the next and the third. And I'm mindful of the fact that I am privileged because I have a day job and I'm doing this on the side. Many entrepreneurs, this is the day job and the side job all in one. And the stakes are high. It is the ability to pay a light bill. It's the ability to send to school children. It's the ability to put food on the table, all riding on this. And I felt that we needed to be a lot more in tune with that, and not just that this is a buzzword. Because right now, what tends to happen is that, you know, when unemployment is increasing and what have you, you will have government say, oh, we need to just do more entrepreneurship. We need to teach entrepreneurship in schools. There's still a subtext of this is what you do when you can't get a job, or that this is what you do when you've not gotten your physics, chemistry, and math. Try entrepreneurship. Yeah. And I find that extremely patronizing and self-serving, and it is disrespectful. And so I have always wanted, and then perhaps that's why I've never called myself an entrepreneur, because I almost felt like it wasn't authentic. Like I too was bandying about a word, but I also know that by straddling these two streams, I'm in a much better position to help others and to learn from myself.
Eskimo, value, convenience, we got it. 50 stores and services, yeah, we got it all. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this mall has it all. Eskimo, right here in Haggett Hall. Eskimo, convenience for the family. Eskimo, everything for you and me. Eskimo, right here, yeah. When it comes to you and your family, it's here in Haggett Hall. Style, food, court, this mall has it all. Eskimo, Eskimo.
So let's talk now about the name Hatchman's Cheeses, because your last name is not Hatchman.
No. Although there are a few hotels who feel that I am Mrs. Hatchman and that my boyfriend is Mr. Hatchman. But so Hatchman was my father's nickname.
Oh, Hatchman.
It was Hatchman.
Oh.
See, I did a little thing there with the Hatchmans so that there was an air of, if there's one thing that I realized in naming my company and the brand.
Right.
When I looked at all of the cheeses, they're coming from different counties in the UK. And it was kind of like up there with, Exeter corned beef.
Right.
It's produced in Brazil or Argentina or wherever, but it's Exeter, and we feel that we have images.
There's an air of premium about
of pampered cows in the fields of Exeter in the UK. So you know what? True thing, true confession. I did the same thing, except that I'd like to believe is a little more authentic because it is the same letters. It's just the difference in pronunciation and emphasis. Right. But Hatchman, and I only discovered at his funeral, was his nickname because of his ability to quote unquote build a pot anywhere, anytime. He was capable of putting random ingredients together and making a killer meal. And
so this is now 3 generations of people
mixing
up
things and feeding people and convincing people to eat. So my uncle told the story of my father basically removing a chicken from my grandmother's deep freeze and dissecting the chicken in such a way that he took out the entire, it was a half of a chicken that was removed and the back. And that's what he scurried away with some ground provisions, and they went to the gully and he made the soup. But he placed the chicken right back inside there, neatly reformed, such that Granny did not know that she was no longer working with a whole chicken.
That must have been a shock.
So apparently this was a standard kind of thing, the nicking out of the meat, the easing out of things out of the larder, all with a view to scurry off somewhere and put together food.
Hatch something
and hatch a pot.
So Andrea, where do you see Hatchman's premium cheeses, not only in the Barbadian landscape, but regionally, even further abroad?
I see it regional first of all, as a regional brand. Yes, it will go, to UK, Canada, wherever in due course. But I want to establish it first and foremost as a regional brand, just simply because we've been told for a very long period of time that we ought not to be in manufacturing. It's expensive, that all these things we can't do. And I want my brand to be a household name in Caribbean homes across the region with flavors that we have developed specifically to channel the Caribbean-ness of our identity. So we have the Scotch Bonnet Jack. There isn't a West Indian that will not know.
We know
what that means. The Drunken Cheddar, same thing. They will not, miss what's happened to this cheese before it's been produced. And then further afield, we're playing around with using seasonal fruits. Sorrel in particular is a tradition all over the Caribbean. And so that's something we use around Christmas to flavor our goat's cheese. So you get something like a sorrel cheesecake happening when you get our sorrel goat's cheese.
Merry Christmas.
And then we're also, for the different export markets that we're looking at in the region, we are in particular looking at the flavor profiles that consumers there like. So if it's Trinidad, it's the curry, it's the spices. Again, it's dialing it up a notch in terms of the peppers and the flavor combinations. So that's why I say I want this to be something that is reflecting the melange of Caribbean society everywhere we go.
And should be in every Caribbean home.
It should be in every Caribbean home, in the fridge, in the door, in the fridge door, with all of its vibrant flavors, whether it's the cumin, whether it's the anchar, what have you. We plan to try it in cheese. So it's less about, channeling Lyon in France, but more about channeling a Laventille, a
Laura State,
yes. A Kingston, a Trelawney, you name it. I'm not greedy, but I feel that Barbados could punch a bunch above its weight and get some of that $180 billion. And I want to say, the one thing that I want to emphasize about my product is that we are at the point where for every dollar that you spend on our product, it's about 80 cents that's retained, because we are also saving foreign exchange. So when you purchase our product, there's, outside of packaging and the cultures, 20% of our product is imported in terms of input. The other 80% is locally produced.
So this is cheese that is literally working for Barbados.
Exactly.
I absolutely love it. I have had the most delicious time with you, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
And I wish you not only the best success with Hatchman's, but I look forward to generations and generations later saying, you know, they have this thing called the internet, and I once saw this segment with the lady that started the Hatchman's cheeses.
Exactly. I want many more Hatchmans, or whatever it's going to be called, across this region. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to share my story, and hope that somebody else sees it and comes up with something also new and innovative. Because, you know, for too long we've been told that we can't.
Yeah.
And I want to prove that we can.
And
that we can do it real well, real good.
I love it.
Yes.
You've been watching another segment of the Pivot series featuring Andrea Power of Hatchman's Premium Cheeses. You know where to find them online. You know where to find them in the supermarkets. And if all goes to plan around the Caribbean, every door you look into in the refrigerator will have your choice of Hatchman's Premium Cheeses. Until the next segment.